மனமேனி நலமே நேயர்களுக்கு வணக்கம். எல்லாரும் ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கீங்கன்னு நம்புறேங்க. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம கெஸ்ட் ரூம் செக்ஷன்ல நம்ம கூட இருக்கிறவங்க மொரீன் மெக்வில்லியம்ஸ். இவங்க ஒரு ரெஜிஸ்டர்ட் சைக்காலஜிஸ்ட். ஒரு கவுன்சிலரா 30 வருஷம் அனுபவம் உள்ளவங்க. வாங்க இவங்க கூட கலந்துரையாடி கவுன்சிலிங் பத்தின பல விஷயம் பத்தி நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம். இந்த வீடியோ உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருந்தா கண்டிப்பா லைக் பண்ணுங்க, ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க, கீழே உள்ள பெல் பட்டனை கிளிக் பண்ணி சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணுங்க. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Manameni Nalame. Today in my guest room section, I have with me a very special guest, Maureen McWilliams, a registered psychologist with an experience that spans over 30 years as a counselor. Join me in conversation with her as she speaks to the different aspects of counseling through her years of experience. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Take care, keep smiling and shining. Good evening, Maureen. Thank you so much for joining me on the guest room section of my YouTube channel, Manameni Lalame Mental Health with Anne. You are my second guest. It is truly an honor to have you, Maureen McWilliams, registered psychologist, join me. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Anne, and I hope that I can help you on this program. So fire away, whatever questions you've got.
Okay, for sure. Thank you. So Maureen, my understanding is you have an experience of a total of around 30 years in the field of counseling.
That's right.
Right. So in your experience, Maureen, could you help our viewers understand what, in your understanding, counseling is, what that process looks like, and what it involves?
Well, counseling generally in the counseling profession is people are seeking some kind of help, usually revolved around a particular problem that they have. And counseling, well, it's not meant to take a person's life over. People usually come when they're either they want a professional opinion. Sometimes there's nobody else to talk to. Sometimes they already know what the answer is, but they just need to bounce the idea off somebody. There are, of course, situations where not everybody wants counseling who comes for counseling. I'm talking about the people who are mandated by court. Sometimes it could be a very reluctant husband, doesn't want to come, but he'll do it because his wife is insisting, or she's going to quit the marriage, legal ramifications. But I would say probably most people are coming because they genuinely want some help of some sort. So it's not just talking and passing the day. It's not meant to be a friendship. It is a professional relationship that we have with people. And people are free to ask questions. They are okay to stop the procedure and tell the therapist that they don't understand something. Generally, what you do is let the client pick the goal, what they want to get out of counseling, because people do come, as I said, for many different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maureen. So what I'm hearing is that people may seek counseling for multiple concerns, right? And as you said, sometimes they know the answer and they want an expert opinion. Sometimes it's about bouncing off an idea with someone who's objective, who's not a friend, who's a professional. Right. And then sometimes they mandate it. Sometimes they come to counseling because someone who cares for them or some family member has requested them to do it. Right. But overall, I'm also hearing what you're saying is counseling is a process that is very client centered. It is a process that is catered around the needs of the client.
Yes. Yeah. It's not about the therapist. So a therapist who keeps going into a lot of detail about their own personal life, they may need to limit that somewhat because we're here for the purpose to help the client as best as they can. And there's a certain percentage of people who really do seek help. Sometimes there's people who are thinking about counseling, but they're not quite sure that they want to do it. So they may just check to see what the procedure is, how they go about it. For some people, sometimes it's a cost issue. Sometimes the budget doesn't allow to have counseling. Some people do have employee assistance benefit programs where it can be billed back directly. Sometimes there's free social service agencies, low cost. you really have to check them out in the community to see what's available. And sometimes people don't even know what their benefits are. So I've had situations in the past where you would tell the person to go on there to check with their HR department to see what the counseling benefits are.
So it gets covered, right? So
Yes.
take care of the cost of counseling for sure, because as you said, that can come in as a barrier. And of course, there are free counseling resources, but not all counseling resources are free. Yeah, so definitely.
Yeah. And there's many different types of counselors too. I mean, there are people who have a lot of training, years and years of training from university. Other people don't have a whole lot. Sometimes there's people who are just starting out. But the main thing is you need to have an interest in people. You generally should be interested in caring for them, helping them to grow, things like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maureen, in your experience, what would you tell us and our viewers about what are the different reasons why people seek counseling?
Well, I would say, because I've seen, I think about between 8,000 and 9,000 clients is what I've had over the years. And some common things are depression, anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of addictions, drug, alcohol, gambling, things like that. Also, sometimes just handling conflict with family members. Sometimes people are trying to make a decision. I would say the majority of people, when they come in for counseling, certainly for the first time, tend to be quite anxious. They are not, it's a complete stranger. They're coming to divulge their intimate, most detailed secrets, and not everybody's comfortable with that. So you really have to make a point of making them feel comfortable so that they will want to open up. So refraining, we're not here to judge you. We're not here to criticize you. We're not here to tell you what to do, how to run your own life. You as a client, you decide what you want to deal with, what your issue is. And of course, it's also up to the client to decide if they're going to do anything about their issue. Like I personally assign homework for people so that it'll help them with whatever that they're trying to get from counseling. But that means that you as a client need to follow through on that, because that's where the change is going to come. It's just if we assign homework, and sometimes people come back week after week, they haven't done anything, and then we have to see, okay, what are we doing here? Maybe counseling at this moment isn't right for the person. They may need to put it off on hold and come back later. Sometimes people need that extra push. There has to be sometimes a catastrophe for some people before they start making changes. There are also situations where people are waiting for something to happen before they start to make the change. Yeah, those are just a few of the things. I also want to say some of the other common reasons that people come in with are relationship problems with either their current spouse or other family members. Or sometimes people are trying to make a decision about their career, what they want to do about their job. They could have difficulty with their employer. Sometimes people are non-assertive. Sometimes a lot of anger management for men as well tends to come up quite a bit. Let's see, what are some other things? Sometimes there are people who do occasionally show up for self-growth. They may want to be a better person, and they just want to work on some of their personal issues. Sometimes it can be for a very specific thing, such as assertiveness training, for instance. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing also, as you're saying, apart from the multiple reasons that people may seek counseling, is that counseling will be effective if the client is ready for change and is willing to take the initiative and do the work.
Yeah, and has to work on it.
Yeah.
People usually don't make huge radical changes overnight. So if they're thinking that counseling is going to solve everything, realistically, no, not at the moment, unless you're prepared to do a heck of a lot of work. But what happens is if a person makes huge radical changes to their life, it doesn't stay, because it's so much work. It's so different to what they are used to doing. It's really hard to keep up the momentum. So usually suggest it's like a turtle who,
Mm.
a little bit at a time. You usually get far greater success if the person is being consistent with whatever the recommendations are, if they're actively working on it. Sometimes people relapse and fall back. There's also a number of situations they've found through research that if a client isn't making change within 3 sessions, then you've got less likelihood that they may make change. There are situations where sometimes, like chronic situations, which is something that's been going on for many years, it can be really hard to just start working on those issues for people. Anyways, there's so many if, ands, and buts. You just give one straight answer for everybody's an individual. Yeah.
But overall, what I'm hearing, Maureen, is that change is hard and change takes time, right? And ideally, realistically, change happens slowly, right? Like slow and steady wins the race is what I'm reminded of.
Yeah, you
right?
got it.
And does that also speak to maybe a misconception that many clients may have that as soon as I start attending counseling, or if I have n number of counseling sessions, change is going to happen like dramatically?
Yes. Sometimes what happens is people have an unrealistic expectation that we as counselors have this magic wand that we can just wave away all your problems and you can go in peace and your life will be lovely. No, I wish I could do that. I would love to do that.
Me too.
Not realistic. It's not realistic. And ultimately, it's not what the therapist does. It is the client and the efforts that they make to make changes. So for instance, depression, okay, a common issue that people come in with. If one of the things that I assign the client to do is get out and get some movement in your life every day, go out for a walk for half an hour or something. And that means the client does that. It doesn't mean I do it. No. Yes, because that would be one of the suggestions. I personally try not to do too much homework for people, but give them something to do. Because sometimes just making the decision to come for counseling has been years in the making. Some people are just scared, they're apprehensive, they hope the problem will disappear. So it can just be a huge, huge, big deal for them to finally come for counseling. So you don't want to scare them off either. You know, if you give them too many things to do, it's like, oh my God, this is exhausting. I don't want to do all this. So realistic expectations, yeah.
And Maureen, what would you tell us about what are some important aspects to ensure counseling will be effective for the client? What would you say?
Okay, well, to be effective, you have to make the therapy fit the client. So for instance, if you have a client who has a learning disability and dislikes reading, you're not going to assign a workbook to him, okay?
Yeah.
There are also some people who like a counselor to share a bit of personal experience that they've had in the with the particular problem that the client's coming in with. So, you know, so there's that expectation. Other things that can have an influence could be things like the type of therapy. Some people would be good using CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Other people strictly want support. It's like, you know, be there for me so that I could feel comfortable disclosing all of this personal detail to you. That's a big question.
Yeah, that was helpful. Yeah. Between different modalities and different techniques that we may use with clients and the Therapeutic Alliance, what would you say is the most important tool that helps towards the success of counseling?
A big part of it is the alliance with does the client feel comfortable with the therapist? That's half of it. Because if they're not feeling comfortable with their therapist, they're not going to be completely honest, and they may drop out of counseling soon too. So building rapport is really important. And, bringing up misconceptions. It's important that if a person does have questions or doesn't feel comfortable, is that they feel comfortable to bring that up to the therapist, because sometimes the therapist may just be following what the procedure is and the policy, and the client takes a total different reading on it. So that is important too. Yeah.
Thank you,
So,
Maureen.
and also have to say, I know the studies they did in North America with counseling, they found the most important thing was the alliance with the counselor, if they felt comfortable with it. They didn't find a whole lot of difference with the type of therapies that were used. The outcome was more or less the same. There's some clients who work very well with more heart-centered approaches. Other people are more problem-solving. There are over 400 types of therapies, by the way. 400. Yeah, some of them overlap. Yeah. Yeah, and therapists get comfortable with the type of therapy that they are most familiar with. I mean, all of us have to continue to upgrade and all that kind of stuff, but people still tend to stick by what they know. If it works, keep on doing it. If not, then make changes.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing overall is the Therapeutic Alliance as in the relationship between the client and the counselor, and the counselor making sure that they provide a safe space for the client where they feel comfortable, and therapy is tailored to the needs of the client so that the client, right, there isn't a power dynamic. The client feels comfortable, they open up, and they can get to the core of why they are seeking counseling.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. So my next question is, what would you say about confidentiality in counseling?
Well, most people, whether they're in private practice or they work for an agency or they work for a hospital, they work for the government, professional therapists are usually working under some kind of ethical guidelines and sometimes legal policies that the agency has, that you have to keep things confidential, which means that you're not sharing the client's information with anybody unless you've got their permission. And there are some cases where you have to share information, but in that case, then you have to get the client to sign a form to state that they are giving authorization for that therapist to speak to whoever it is about whatever that the issue is. So it could be like Child and Family Services, where there's been children apprehended and the client may be getting treatment from the therapist, and the social worker wants information from them, so then the client would sign the form stating Miss, whatever the counselor's name is authorized to be able to speak to the social worker about whatever that the issues are. Sometimes they'll specify what it is, or sometimes it can just be quite open and general. Yeah, and there's repercussions. I mean, a client can sue you for disclosing information where you weren't authorized to do it. So usually confidentiality is taken very, very seriously by most agencies. So you have to have some kind of records, like where they are locked up, for instance, and nobody has access to them except for the counselor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Maureen, because that in my understanding, especially within different ethnic communities where there is a lot of stigma around mental health, people refrain from seeking counseling because they feel, if I'm going to go and tell all my personal stuff to my counselor, it's going to spread. They're going to write to someone else, or in a small town or within a close-knit community. Right. But the fact that you spoke about confidentiality is key to the process of counseling, I think, is a very important message that our viewers come to know. And hopefully it removes that barrier for us.
Yeah, definitely, because confidentiality can be really critical for people. And sometimes, I mean, not to negate people, but some people where they haven't had much training and they're doing what they call counseling, and they haven't been taught all of this. So really important to check what the guidelines are, what profession that they're with, because there's also, I don't want to use the word fake counselors, but it's something like that, where people have very minimal training, and they could have sent away for their diploma without having done the actual work. There was just a show on this on the marketplace a few months ago about these fake credentials that people have when they're doing counseling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's good information as well, because I think every person deserves to get quality services, right? Whether it's physical health or mental health. And yeah, the fact that they should look into the credentials of the counselor. Are they registered under a certain body, and do they follow a professional conduct when they're doing their work, for sure.